Here we are again. Massive welcome to all of our viewers on YouTube to a one-off special here on InfoSec Live, where I'm joined today by our community's very own Phill Slusar to hear all about his journey into the industry. And of course, giving you, our audience, the chance to engage with and learn from our guest today. Now, Phill is an integral part of the InfoSec Live community with over 15 years experience in the IT industry, and with the last 7 being dedicated solely to cybersecurity. With just short of 10 years for a multinational FTSE 100 software company, starting in IT support before moving to an IT infrastructure role for 6 years, and then taking on his first dedicated cybersecurity role for 2.5 years as a security engineer. He then had a short 12-month stint for a hardware vendor at the start of the pandemic, effectively, as a security engineer, which was made very difficult by an acquisition and obviously the whole COVID thing that was going on. He then moved to a video game studio at the start of 2021 as an information security specialist, leading the information and cybersecurity program. He never went to university, so doesn't have a degree, but is certified in Sec+, CISSA+, and PenTest+, as well as recently defeating the CISSP for the first time. And I think we'll chat about that in a bit, Phill. But before we bring Phill on, and for those that are new to the channel, I'm your host, Simon Linstead. And by sharing stories and best practices over the last few months, it's led to over 200,000 views here on YouTube by you, our amazing 11,000 subscribers. So thank you very, very much for your support. And let's not forget where all this began. If I can find the right link, here it is, in the free InfoSec Live community, where we have study groups, mentor sessions, free mini courses, and regular networking events to help you raise your game in cyber, no matter what stage you are at in your career, giving you the opportunity to network with over 6,000 cyber professionals. And this week, we've officially become a not-for-profit here in the UK to help our members even more. And there'll be more news coming soon on this over the next week or two. So make sure you check out the community if you haven't already. If you're too scared to scan the QR code, which I get if you work in cyber, there is a link to join in the description of the event as well. And don't forget, each and every one of our live shows gives you, the audience, the chance to engage with our guests. So do make sure you drop any questions you have in the chat about this week's guest stories. So let's bring Phill on. Welcome, Phill.
Hello, good evening.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come on, and thank you so much for being such a contributing member of the InfoSec Live community. It does mean a lot.
Thanks for having me. No, it's good to be a part of it.
Pleasure. Okay, where should we start? So lots of people have spoken to you in the chat in the community. They've probably seen your name in there. Let's help them understand a bit more about who Phill is. So talk to me. I've mentioned a bit about your career, and we'll come back to that in a moment. But talk to me about where this passion came from in the first place, Phill. Where did the passion for tech arise?
So I think I've always been passionate about about tech, about IT, gaming, all that kind of stuff, building your own PCs when you're younger, all that kind of stuff. And I think when I was at school, IT was really just coming to the forefront. So we were doing IT classes in school, but they weren't really in depth. They were kind of Microsoft Access and things like that. I went to Cambridge Regional College and went to do A-levels, and IT was one of those. Failed that, which was not very good. Didn't really do too well in my A-levels. Wasn't really an academic, to be honest. But then after that, I went and did a BTEC national diploma, which it was at the time, in IT. So kind of took 2 years. 2 years back, did that because I thought IT's probably the place to be, because it was up and coming, and it seemed like that was going to be at least where the money was in terms of my skill set. So did that, and then obviously didn't go to university. It was kind of around the time where the tuition fees changed. I think it was, my brother went and it was about £3,000 a year, and then when it was my turn to go, I think it went up to about £15,000 a year, and I didn't really want to have the debt, and also I didn't want to get my parents to spend that amount of money on me to go to university. So I got into basically just got into the IT industry from there. So went and worked for a software company in Cambridge. So I'm Cambridge based. I've always kind of worked around Cambridge. Starting there in IT support. Did that for a couple of years, kind of cutting my teeth in fixing computers, fixing problems, talking to people, and just really getting some experience there. And then we worked quite closely with the IT infrastructure team, who were a global team. So we really, in IT support, were looking after the UK. This was for a FTSE 100 company. FTSE 250 went to FTSE 100. And we had about 40 sites globally. So I always then kind of got an interest in a lot of the back-end infrastructure, networking, Active Directory, Microsoft servers, storage, all that kind of stuff, and kind of got a bit pally with the guys in that team. That was quite a small team. And then when an opportunity came up, I applied for that, managed to secure that role. Went and did that for about 6 years. Like I say, focusing on the global networks and really getting into kind of the nitty-gritty of Cisco's and checkpoint firewalls and all those kind of things. And then it was around 2017 when WannaCry happened, which is where I really kind of got the knack to kind of want to get into cybersecurity. It was all over the news. The NHS has been hit by ransomware, and it's this thing that's spreading, and you kind of glued to it. I remember just sitting watching Sky News, and I was like, "Oh, this is brilliant." And I quickly jumped on to a load of our servers. And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, let's make sure we're not affected by it." It was Eternal Blue, which is one of the NSA tools. And I think at the time we were doing security, but it wasn't its own dedicated function. It was the stuff that the infrastructure team would do. So patching and things like that. I thought, this is brilliant. So I kind of then started to get the bug for it, and then kind of took on more of a security-led infrastructure role. And then they decided that the organization wanted to start a security team. So I then moved into that. So I was then dedicated to cybersecurity effectively. We got a security manager came in, who I kind of used as mentor for the 3 years that I was there. Still get on with him now. He was a really, really great mentor, especially looking at kind of more of the leadership side as opposed to just the technical stuff. Yeah. So from there, then moved over to hardware vendor. That was kind of just as COVID was about to start. So I think I was 3 months into it before we all went off into COVID, and then 3 months later we got acquired by a big American company. That then kind of became a bit difficult because they laid off quite a large amount of the company. Weirdly, I was kept on. I don't know why. I was only there for 6 months. So after that, then went to a computer games company, Frontier Developments, which is where I am now. We make some awesome games. You probably know a few of our titles: Elite Dangerous, Planet Zoo, Planet Coaster, Jurassic World Evolution, F1 Manager. Some, amazing games that we do. It's such a great company to work for. So there I'm now kind of leading the information and cybersecurity program there. We basically cover anything that's to do with information security, whether that's security operations, looking at all the controls that we've got, all the controls we need to put in. We're looking at the governance and compliance. We're looking at policies and just getting the company to kind of take on different standards. But we're also trying to change the business culture. We're introducing security awareness training. So it's quite a broad role, and I think that's where the kind of job title information security specialist comes from, kind of the SME, and basically just trying to look after the entire cybersecurity chain, really.
And how have you found the transition from the more hands-on keyboard role to the leadership position you find yourself in now? What has been, I suppose, two things. One, what's been particularly challenging, and what do you feel your biggest achievements are in that transition?
Most challenging bit is time. What I find, we're a very, very small team, so I do have to get my hands dirty sometimes, which is great because I still get to do a lot of that technical stuff, especially when you're implementing controls. And you've been an engineer for a certain amount of time. You like getting into some of the problem solving, and even when we're dealing with detections and alerts, things like that, I still jump into some of those and do some investigation. But then there's a lot of it which is kind of the board reports, policy writing, meetings, lots of meetings. And things like that. So it's more of the time thing that's the hardest bit. But it'll be nice, I think, once we can look to kind of expand the team, and get some more hands, that'd be amazing.
So spinning lots of plates effectively, which is pretty normal in a SMB sized organization, right? For anyone, no matter what the job role is. And I think
exactly.
I think it can be quite exciting as well. It's challenging, but you definitely get to learn an awful lot and sort of get thrown in at the deep end, maybe. Okay, one of the things you mentioned in your bio, and I know for a fact that you've done recently because you've talked about it in the community, is that you've passed the CISSP.
Yeah, that's right.
Talk to me about that. Oh no, oh, there we go. If I could zoom in, I would. We had a quick chat about it off air before we came online, and the question I asked you, I think, was it hard? Was the first question. But talk to me about how you found the CISSP before we move on to who it's relevant for and whether people should sit it or not.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with a little bit of background on my certifications. Like you said, I did the Sec Plus, I did the CySA Plus, did the PenTest Plus. They're all CompTIA exams. Sec Plus was really just to kind of get an idea of the different topics to do within cybersecurity. And then I obviously wanted to learn a bit more about the blue side. So I focused a bit more on the CYSA, which is the cybersecurity analyst. That was great because that gave you a bit more insight into vulnerabilities and kind of managing detections and things like that. And then I wanted to learn a bit more about the red side. And so I went and did the PenTest Plus. Again, that's then more focusing on how you actually hack the things. So yeah, that was a little bit more difficult because I wasn't really a hacker. I tried to do it, but just never really got on with it. So yeah, so they're the ones that I'd kind of done before, and they're very theory based, and I think they're quite low level, to be honest. The CISSP is a completely different kettle of fish. I started looking at it in early 2021, and I bought the book, 1,000-page book, and it's not a page turner. I'm not really a reader, and trying to get through a book like that is an absolute nightmare. So I kept putting it off. I read a little bit of it every now and then put it down again, read a little bit more, put it down again, bought it on the Kindle, started again, and never really got through the book. And I think towards the end of last year, I just decided I needed to get it done. It was on my kind of career plan. I'd kind of given myself like a loose outline of where I wanted to be, like a kind of a 10-year plan, and the CISSP was on it. So I just felt like I needed to get it, and I was at the stage of my career where I've been in the industry long enough. I've got some experience. I should be able to at least give it a good go. And they were doing a good offer, which was had an insurance exam. So you take one exam, you fail it, you get a retry. So at least I could see what the exam was like. I studied solid through January. And I had the exam booked for, I think it was the last day of January. I thought it was going fine. Got to the last few days and started reading Reddit, and it was basically just doom and gloom, and everything was, you're not going to pass this. You're not, you don't know about this. You don't know about that. And the book itself is very, very technical. There's a lot of detail, and it goes down into some really granular things, and even things that you wouldn't even think about, like military radio waves and how you can do communications in like a tent just between two people, things that you never think you're going to need. And when you actually
we're not talking cups and string here, are we, Phil? Am I right?
Effectively, yeah, it was down to that level. Yeah, it was how do you get the signal through, straight through the string. But yeah, and then it got to I think a couple of days before the exam, and I thought, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. I really started to feel down about myself. Ended up going to the exam just thinking I'm going to take it and I'll see how I get on. Halfway through, I felt like I'd failed. Basically, the exam isn't anything like what's in the book. It's all you have to think that you're a risk advisor, not a technical person. So there's basically 4 answers. They're all right, but you have to work out which one is the best one based on the 4 that are there. So yeah, I kind of got to halfway through the exam and thought, no, if this finishes at 125 questions, then I failed. Got to the last question, hit next, and it said, that's it, end of the exam. And you don't get the response until you actually go back to the desk and they print it out for you and
I've done that
fold
before.
it up and hand it to you. So I thought, no, I've completely failed this. I'm gonna have to book it again. Just put it in my pocket, got my stuff, went out, got into the car, checked my emails, and I got an email basically saying, "Oh, congratulations, you've met the criteria." And I was like, "Hang on a minute." So I looked at it and I was like, "Wow." I was shocked. I was actually shocked that I'd got through it. So something went right. I don't know if the exam was broken, but something definitely went
I'm sure the exam wasn't broken. We've had a few questions in. We've had a few questions in about the CISSP actually. Jamshade has said, how long did you actually study for? Is the first one.
So I solidly studied for a month, so all of January, but I had been reading the book in parts for a couple of years, just really slowly. But because I've been in the industry a while as well, I kind of know a lot of it. And having done the Sec Plus, the CySA Plus, a lot of the content is fairly similar. So you do get an understanding of all those kind of
you've
topics
got overlap
already.
if you've done previous exams.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the same with a lot of them. You know, if you've done the CISM, then there's a lot of overlap with the CISSP. So it's all the same content, just in different levels, really. But yeah, so that's how long it took me.
And next question from Jamshade is, what are your study tips for CISSP? And this might be a good time to introduce the study group that you formed in the community.
Yeah. So on the community, we do have a CISSP study group. I've put all the resources in there as to what I've used. There's some, I think really the best ones I used were, there was a Pete Zerger YouTube cram, which was really good. Basically went through into all of the topics at very high level. So you could then go and do your own research, which was really good. And there's an official study app, which is, I think it's called LearnZap. It is a subscription. So it's usually, if you are going to take it, it's usually best to kind of take it when you're closer to the exam, but that's full of flashcards and practice questions. So, you know, you could be out.
Is it expensive?
No, it wasn't. I think it was about £30 for 3 months access. But yeah, when you're out,
you'd say it was worthwhile. It was worth.
Yeah, definitely. Investment. Yeah, definitely. You get the free question set with the book, but the LearnZap one is a huge amount of questions and flashcards, and you can just have it on the go. So you can just quickly go and do 10 questions whilst you're having something to eat, or 100 questions if your wife's trying on clothes, and all those kind of things. So it's really handy.
Brilliant. And I'm going to ask you a random one now, because I've just seen this in from Prashant, and it's brilliant. And I hope you say Lara Croft. If you could be a famous game character, who would it be and why? That's a tricky one, Prashant. That's a tricky one.
Yeah, I think The Last of Us is my favourite game. Out of all the games I've played, The Last of Us is the one I've played the most. And I think it'd have to be Joel from The Last of Us. He's awesome. It's such a good game. Probably it's the best game I've played.
And what sort of game is that?
It's a kind of single player role play game. So you basically take the part of Joel, and you go and find it's basically an infected world. They've got a series of it on on Sky, which is worth watching.
I'll give that a try. The last series I watched, I tried reading the book. It was The Three Body Problem by Shinzu, which is the book I could not get on with. But I've just watched for the first series in about 5 years on TV on Netflix, and I thought it was really, really good. I enjoyed that. But gameplay for me, I think it would be Ratchet from Ratchet and Clank back in the PlayStation days, because I used to love that game.
Yeah, they're still going.
Much. Is it still going?
Yeah. Got one on the PS5.
I need to get myself a PS5. It seems like we've got a few people in the audience who are either looking to break into the industry or maybe looking to raise their own career game. What would your tips be for those looking to take those next steps in the industry? What was it that worked for you, Phil?
So I think for me, a lot of it was study, getting that kind of background information on what it is there, trying to iron out where you want to go. And what role you want, because I think everyone wants to be a pen tester or a SOC analyst, and I think that's great if you go and work for a pen testing company, or you go and work for a big MSP that's kind of got a SOC team. But if you go to any kind of private business, they're unlikely to have such a huge team, so you do need to have quite a general outlook on the different aspects. So I think that's a really good place to start. Networking, I think, is just, there's so much can be said for networking and joining communities like the infosec.live, finding your local chapters and talks, things like that. I go to quite a lot of local ones in Cambridge. We've got OWASP, we've got ISC Squared. It's also an OWASP in Peterborough. So you just get to go to those, you network with people, you meet, people that have different roles, different experiences. I mean, you look at the kind of people we've got in the in the community at the moment. We've got, Dr. Mike, who's just a genius on anything GRC. You've got we've got Buck. Buck's great with risk, and the amount of experience that he's got is amazing. And even JJ with all the the SOC. He's a global SOC leader. So if you need anything to do with running a global SOC, he's the guy to speak to. I think it's just there's so much available there.
It's building those relationships, isn't it? And being surrounded by the right people. I mean, I suppose that leads me on to a question. Has there been anyone who's been your biggest inspiration? It doesn't have to be in the industry. It could be outside the industry. Who do you look up to? Who's inspired you, Phil? You're going to say Joel. You're going to say Joel again, aren't you?
No, I think I've had a number of mentors throughout my time. Some of them I still talk to. Some of them I don't. But I think one of the important ones I had was when I was at the software company. I sat down with at the time, he was kind of our deputy CIO, and we kind of just sat down and mapped out like a 10-year plan. And it was kind of, if you're here, if you're not here, let's just sit down and work out kind of where you want to go, and then work backwards and to how we can do that. So I think that was really important. And that's one of those things. I didn't look at it for a long time, and then I kind of had a look, and it's just naturally progressed with me. So yeah, I think I was on about year 6 or 7, and the CISSP was there, and I think doing talks and better networking, all that kind of stuff was all in there as well. So that was really helpful. And I just think a lot of the cybersecurity leaders that I've had as well, that I've just been able to talk to and bounce ideas off of, has been really good.
Thanks, Phil. How important is it having a plan, I suppose, is the question I'd ask you. We sometimes go through life bumbling along, and then we find ourselves, like I do this year a little bit, turning 50 and wondering where all the time's gone. Would you say that having a plan is a very important thing to do, and how closely do you need to monitor that plan to ensure that you're on track?
I think it definitely helps. I think if you've got a clear goal in mind as to where you want to be, I think being able to look at that, work backwards to see where you want to be and set certain milestones, and it's really good to just kind of keep you on that level. Obviously, things are going to change. You could be working at one place, you could be working at another place, or you may have family things that overtake. But I think it's definitely good to kind of give you that basis. I mean, I'm not very much of a planner. I get distracted by all sorts of shiny
squirrel
things. Yeah, exactly. That's definitely me. But having a plan, you don't have to stick to all the time. Oh, my earbud fell out. You don't have to stick to it all the time.
The way you caught it seamlessly, though.
Yeah. But you don't have to follow it all the time. But it's enough just to be able to go back and just say, well, where am I? Do I need to focus more attention on this, or should I look to do something else? Because the industry changes so often. You can't set a 5 or 10-year plan and stick to that. So it just has to.
And I think that's it. It's the adaptability and the ability to pivot and know when you need to adapt and change your plan is probably the biggest bit of advice I could give, because like you said, the world itself changes so fast now. What's relevant today might not be relevant in 5 years' time. I see Prashant in the squirrel as well. George has asked a question. Let me bring this one up. Good day. Thanks for the talk. Just finished a master's in cybersecurity. Do I still need certifications, or can I just go the self-taught route? That's a good question, George. That is.
I think certifications, I mean, as a hiring manager, I don't necessarily look at what certifications you've got. I think I'm more after, have you got not necessarily experience, but have you read the content? So even the CISSP, you could go through that big long book. You don't have to take the exam, but if you can explain to me how encryption works and all this stuff based on what's in the book, then that's probably enough for me to go, no, you're pretty smart, you know your stuff. So, and it depends on the role as well, but I don't think you need to have certifications. I know there's a lot of talk about, jobs with entry level role, but you need 5 years experience in CISSP. I don't know how relevant that is, to be honest. But no, I don't think
this brings us to the point of, it depends on the employer as well, doesn't it? It depends on the maturity of their organization when it comes to security. It depends on whether they actually have a clear definition and understanding of who they need. Because like you said, Phil, a lot of the job adverts you see out there, it does lead you to believe that perhaps these people don't actually know who they're looking for if they're asking for requirements that are just unobtainable.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can kind of show a lot by by saying that you go to events and you go to, like, you look at InfoSec Europe or something like that. It's this massive, great conference, but you can go there and you can talk to people and you can get an understanding of what the industry is like, and that's experience in itself. It's absolutely knackering going to a day there. But there's so many talks and things there that you can just absorb information and take that into interviews. I think having a cybersecurity degree, it'll get you a foot in the door. And having the extra certifications aren't really required, I don't think.
And would you say for someone who's got a master's that there is a particular type of employer or industry that are more likely to want to see that, or is that an irrelevant question? I'm just thinking about how George can maybe target his job search a little bit.
I think if you look at some of the big four auditing companies, your Deloitte's, your Ernst Young's, those kind of guys are always after degrees and things like that. And I think that's because degrees, masters, they're really beneficial in being able to give you that basis on how to do research, how to do reporting, how to stick to kind of project deadlines and things like that. And I think that's really important. So I think they're probably a good place to start, but it really depends on what kind of role you want. If you're after a GRC role, then there's a lot of companies that are looking for for those kind of roles. But
perfect, thanks, Phil. And Akib, you've just stolen my final question for Phil, actually. Although you've asked, what is your favourite cybersecurity book? I was going to open this up a little bit just to ask what your favourite book was, in case you didn't have a favourite cybersecurity book. But I do have a backup book down here, just in case we need it. But what's your thoughts on that, Phil?
So my favorite book. So I've got two kids, so I read a lot of children's books. So I think at the moment we're kind of going through all the dinosaur that pooped books. So they're all good fun. And Wonky Donkey. So they're probably the ones at the moment. But no, so I even wrote some notes about some of the books that have helped me. Okay. I think there's a couple. Countdown to Zero Day is a really good one. Focuses quite a lot on Stuxnet, which was, I think, basically the US trying to infiltrate the Iranian enriching of uranium. So it's really, really exciting because they built a worm, managed to get that into their control systems, and the whole idea was that they would basically make the centrifuges turn slightly slower than normal, because if they did it a certain amount, they would be able to kind of break the centrifuges. But they needed to do it without it being noticed. So that's a really good book. And Sandworm as well, which kind of goes on a little bit to the WannaCry bit around the time of NotPetya. And that focuses quite a lot on Russian nation state hacking. And it kind of goes into a lot of detail of NotPetya, which is quite when you read it, it's quite as devastating as it was quite an interesting piece of malware. So they're two really good books that I'd recommend. And also, if you want to see how InfoSec are perceived by a business, the Phoenix Project is a really good one. It's really focused around kind of DevOps stuff. But every time it kind of talks about the InfoSec guys, it's like, oh no, they're those people that want us to stop doing everything and just want us to put down tools because we're going to cause something.
The Department of No, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and it's really. I read the first few pages and I was like, I've been in so many companies where this is the this is how InfoSec and IT are seen. So that's a good one.
Seeing as we're doing book recommendations, the one I've read two recently, but one's downstairs, so I can't actually show you that. Ross Haliuk wrote a book for people who are either investors, entrepreneurs, or looking to launch a business. Cyber for Builders, it's called. And I read that last week, and it gives a completely different perspective of the industry from kind of outside looking in. And I would recommend that book, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. If you're looking to come into the industry, having the viewpoint from investors and business owners on what the industry's like will really help, I think, you understand how to put things across when it comes to your career. And the other one I've read recently is that one, which is What We Call Security by Greg Vandergast, where he basically rips apart everything we're doing wrong. And I think, again, from having a different context of the industry, that's quite a good one. And if my wife's watching this, I'm going to have to show this one, which is the book she got for me when we got married, which is called Simon, the Reasons I Love You. So that should really be my
Brilliant.
that should really be my favourite book. And if she is watching, I should get some bounty points for that, Laura.
Amazing. There were two. There was another one I just thought of actually. Tribe of Hackers, which is a good one. They've got, I think, maybe 3 or 4 different ones in the series, but it's essentially really good if you're looking at kind of a blue team role or a red team role or security.
What was
leadership.
it called? Sorry, Tribe of
Hackers. And it's basically they interview a load of, in the leadership book, they interview a load of cybersecurity leaders, and the blue team one, it's a load of blue team leaders, and same with the red team. But they ask the same kind of questions, and there are things in there about, how did you get into the industry? What do you see as the most important thing to know? So I think trying to get into the industry, that could be quite a handy one to read as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Phill, thank you so much. We're pretty much out of time. We've done the 30 minutes. Oh, Carrie's got a question. Let's just get Carrie's question before we go. Question, here we go. What about the entry-level jobs that want 5 years of experience? Yeah, well.
So part of me, I always look at this, and part of me wonders if it's more that when those jobs are being put on, because I see it's always on LinkedIn, part of me wonders, is it a default in LinkedIn that someone puts a job role on there and they don't change that setting? And that's why all these jobs are entry level, because the industry can't be that
stupid. We can't be that stupid, can we? No.
But no, you definitely, entry level jobs should be entry level jobs. And I know a few people that have managed to, and it all depends on the business. Companies that have managed to have the time to be able to say, no, look, we're going to take someone on and we are going to build that person's skill set. And I think that's where the problem is. If you've got a company that hasn't got the time, or just wants, quick, we need someone to come in now, then you're going to need to have the experience. But if you've got a company that's got time to say, no, we've got all this time, let's bring someone in, nurture them, give them the training, then that's where those entry-level jobs are going to come. I think they're quite hard to come by.
Well, they are. And I think, playing devil's advocate from someone who's owned a small to medium business before, it's not always affordable for people to train people. And I think the cost for training, when businesses at the moment are economically squeezed due to the current global economic climate, I think to then onboard people who are effectively, and this is going to sound really harsh, but not going to add any value for maybe 6 to 12 months, just sometimes isn't financially possible for those organizations. However, bigger organizations, and I will name one that I know that's doing it really well, like Aviva here in the UK, who my 18-year-old Sonny works for as an apprentice in their cybersecurity engineering team. They've got the resources to run that apprenticeship scheme, and it's fantastic. So my dream for the community is for us to be able to build out an apprenticeship program that supports the SMB sector, so the community can take on the mentorship role, the structure role, and the continuous professional development. So that's something that we're working on behind the scenes at the moment. But one of the reasons why we got the not-for-profit status is that so we can approach the government with regards to grants when it comes to those apprenticeships. But I'm going to finish off with Richard Yates' comment, because I think you might know Richard, Phill. And Richard has asked, do you still hoff people if they leave their laptop unlocked when walking out of the office? Brilliant, Richard.
Well, yeah. So if no one knows what hoffing is, I'm sure this is, because I've heard of this in other things. But yeah, we used to do this all the time. If someone leaves their computer unlocked, we would have a default wallpaper which we would basically set on their machines, and it sometimes went up to the level of CEO, and it was basically, you've been hoffed, so start locking your screen. But it was essentially David Hasselhoff in a pair of tiger print.
He's in his Speedos, isn't he?
Yeah, he's in his Speedos, just kind of lying like that. So people very quickly learnt to lock their screens, so IT couldn't just go around and change their desktop wallpaper.
I think you could have thought of an idea for a business for security awareness training here, Phill.
Yeah.
I think this could actually be a winner, couldn't it?
Well, that's what Rickrolling is, isn't it?
It is, yeah, very much so. Everyone in the audience, thank you so much for the questions. Phill, thank you very much, well, for 2 things, really. One, for all the support and input you give to the community, and secondly, for coming on here and sharing your story today. I believe this is your first podcast as well, so I hope it wasn't too painful.
It is live debut.
Live debut. So look, let me equalize this on the screen and just wrap things up. If you haven't joined the community, please do. There's a link in the comments. I've got a QR code here as well if you are brave enough to scan it. If you want to continue the conversation with Phill, he's offered in the chat, as am I, and a number of other people. It'd be great to see you in there. Also, if you're looking to do your first podcast and be a guest, I'm always looking for guests for the show. So do reach out to me through LinkedIn or indeed the community itself. But from me and Phill, Have an amazing weekend. Well, it's not Saturday yet, is it? It's Thursday.
We're almost there.
Okay, in that case, see you tomorrow, same time for the Cyber News Show. Then it will be the weekend, the day after. And everyone, have a great rest of the day. Phill, thank you again. See you. Oh, I suppose I should ask you really if you've got any insightful last words before I wrap things up.
Insightful last words, no. Follow me on LinkedIn. I normally post things on there, so you might find some inspiring things there.
Let me just get your LinkedIn profile up before we wrap this up. And I can drop that in the chat. There we go. Multitasking is clearly not my strong point. Drop that in there. There we go. Brilliant. Connect with him on LinkedIn. Awesome. Everyone, have an amazing day. Phill, thank you again so much. See you all soon.
Thanks a lot, Simon. Care. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Bye.